Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.
Hello, I'm Lorene Mills, and welcome to Report from Santa Fe. We have a very special guest today. Former Representative J. Paul Taylor from Mesilla is in the House, former House member. Thank you for joining us.
I'm very pleased to be here.
Well, you are leaving such a mark on New Mexico as an educator, as a legislator, as an arts patron, as a historian, as a community leader. You've done so much. Thank you. One of the things, for people who want to know more, Anna Pacheco, a wonderful writer, has written this book called J. Paul Taylor, The Man from Mesilla. So, welcome to our show.
Well, so pleased to be here.
Your family your family background is absolutely extraordinary. On both sides, you trace back to Spain, but tell us a little about your grandfather, your great-grandfather. Your family has made such a mark in New Mexico.
Well, my mother was Margarita Romero, and her grandparents were Miguel Romero Ibaca and Josefa Delgado. And that's one side of the family. And on her maternal side, it was Francisco Lopez and Petrita Baca. And Francisco Lopez is descended from the first settlers who came in 1598. And Miguel Romero Ibaca's grandfather was a soldier with Coronado in 1540. So they do go back a long ways in New Mexico history.
And your mother, Margarita Romero, the Romeros founded Romeroville up by Las Vegas.
That's right, and her father was New Mexico's delegate to Congress.
That's right.
In 1886, and they were all Republicans.
Ah.
And I'm a Democrat, as you probably know.
Yes.
And we always respected the other side of the family, which was whether Republican or Democrat.
Yes, yes. So, grandfather Baca, his family estate is where Rancho de los Golondrinas is now, outside of Santa Fe.
That's where he was born.
Yes.
That was the Bacaiteros ranch.
And so then they moved to Las Vegas. He was the first wholesale grocer there, right? Who kept people together more than the grocer in those days?
Well, and he traveled regularly to Kansas City and St. Louis with his trade. He would take trading objects like sheepskin to the east and come back with merchandise for his stores.
And so he really worked the old Santa Fe Trail then. He was a trader, a merchant on the old Santa Fe Trail.
That's right.
Yes. And on the other side, the Delgado side, he owned the Delgado Mines. He was also a businessman. Tell me more about that side.
Well, the first Delgado who came here was Manuel Francisco Delgado. He was second in command of the Spanish garrison here.
Ah.
He was born near Pachuca in Mexico, and his son was Manuel Salustiano, and Manuel's daughter was Josefa, who was my great-grandmother, who married Miguel Romero Ibaca. If you can keep track of
I
all
can,
that.
because fortunately, in this wonderful book, The Man from Mesilla, there is your family tree going all the way back to Spain. So I know that when in March, when they did a memorial for you on the House floor, celebrating J. Paul Taylor, Speaker Ken Martinez said, "You're the only person who has more cousins than he does." So wherever you go, you find out you're related to most New Mexicans.
Well, I have quite a few cousins, and I'm very attached to them too.
Yeah. You still have the family reunions.
We had one just last year, and it was at the Plaza Hotel, which my grandfather, my great uncle, Margarito, had built. Margarito and Eugenio were members of the First Constitutional Convention.
Oh, yes.
So they were very much involved.
They're very much founding fathers of our state. And you have carried this forward in such a grand way. In your education, you got a bachelor's in history, and you have worked so hard with cultural preservation and preserving religious art. I want to first look at your first career, 39 years as an educator. So you did things that were so visionary for your time. You created a program that my own daughter participated in, the 5th grade New Mexico history program.
That's right.
And before that, people either absorbed it or they ignored it. And so now each child learns our wonderful New Mexico history. Thank you. And also in 1968, way before anyone would have thought, you established the first bilingual program. Tell me about that.
Well, there was a need for children to feel a part of their culture. And language, of course, is a very important part of one's culture. And so we had a wonderful board. We had a wonderful administration. And I wrote a grant which would provide for bilingual education. The children who started in that program, which was kindergarten, they went through 12th grade. We kept track of each one of those children, and we only lost one. And we never knew what happened to that person. They family moved away.
Yeah.
But they've, I bump into them on the street every once in a while. One's an artist. One has become an engineer. One is head of the X-ray company, which takes care of me.
Oh, great. Well, they take extra good care of you.
Right.
You became the president of NEA New Mexico, and you carried all those 39 years of teaching experience into your next profession, which was when you became a legislator. And as a legislator, you instituted our half and full day kindergarten programs and worked with so much with early childhood education because you had been a teacher. You knew what was needed.
That's right. The first bill I carried was created the Office of Child Development. Then it was half-day kindergarten, then full-day kindergarten.
And now we're even pushing for pre-K.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes.
The earlier the kids start, the better off they'll be.
Well, you brought your experience into your work as a lawmaker, but you also were a person who always gave voice to the voiceless. You spoke for the children, for the elderly, for the infirm, people who couldn't speak for themselves. And You were head of the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. They named you legislator of the decade. And in March, I mentioned this earlier, they had a memorial celebrating you. And many, many of the lawmakers stood up and spoke in your honors.
It was very embarrassing for me.
Well, they said so many wonderful things. I can see that it would be embarrassing because they always called you the conscience of the House. And Speaker Martinez said when there'd be a long debate, back and forth, right and wrong, up and down, good and evil, at the end of it, you would stand and you would say, is this the right thing to do? Thank goodness things were not as toxically partisan as they are now, but you were always a person who could be seen working to be sure that the Republicans and Democrats work together for the best of the state.
And my partner to the right was always Murray Ryan, who was a great Republican.
Yes.
And I can remember that we had a great majority of Democrats, and Murray had to move from his position on the aisle across the aisle. And he would come across the aisle to talk to me, and he'd say, I don't know why we have to have this moat between us.
Yes. Well, he is another one of our great lawmakers. And, it's funny, you being down from Mesilla and him from Silver City, in those days, the power was pretty evenly distributed from north, south, east, and west. What relation is Mary Helen Garcia to you?
She's no relation, but she was the one who approached me to go into the legislature. And I said, Mary Helen, I'm retiring. I want to write, and I want to tend the patio. And she said, oh, Paul. First she said, we want you to run for governor. I said, that's absurd. And so I dismissed it. She was back in 2 weeks, and she said, you simply have to run for the House seat. And I said, well, I'll have to consult with my family. And after consulting with them, they thought, well, I guess it'll be good to get him out of the house. So they agreed.
Well, you brought issues, living in Mesilla and in a very poor part of the state, you were able to understand the problems that the poor face and bring social services and bring help to them. It was Representative Mary Helen Garcia who sponsored this memorial, and she talked about how you'd been a mentor to so many people and how humble you are, even now, about your accomplishments, but mostly your great heart and how much you care. That's another thing that our chief clerk, Stephen Arias, said, that you were the most dedicated, hardworking, caring lawmaker, and tenacious, too, and way beyond the political differences. So you have many fans and many, many friends. We are speaking today with former Representative J. Paul Taylor. This beautiful book about him by Ana Pacheco is called The Man from Mesilla, that has your family history and your career as an educator and a legislator. But we're going to move on in the second half of the show to your cultural contributions, because you have been a preservationist and you have quite a collection of religious art. I love the story you tell me about Santiago, a small Santiago sculpture that you saw. Can you tell us that?
Well, when educators in the old days had to go to a convention in Albuquerque, and so I would always putter around and see what I could find which was interesting. and I found this statue of Santiago. It's a New Mexico piece. He's sitting on a horse, handmade. It's my favorite piece, and it was $90. And I said, well, sorry, I can't afford $90. Well,
On a teacher's salary.
teacher's salary, probably $2,400 a year.
Oh.
And so, but every year, I'd go back and see if he was there. And probably I hoped that he would be sold so I wouldn't have this longing for it. But probably on the third time, she said, well, Santiago is still here. And we're going up on the price of all our antiquities. And if you want Santiago, you better take him now. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I don't have $90. She said, do you have $5 you can put down? And I said, yes, I have $5 I can put down. She said, well, put down $5 and send me $5 a month, and you can have Santiago. And so the deal was made, and I started to leave. And she said, well, aren't you going to take Santiago? I said, I've only given you $5. How can I take Santiago? And she said, you've been in here so many times to see it. I know I can trust you. So he continues to be one of my favorite pieces.
Well, I want to talk about your house and your collections. I do have a picture of just one of the rooms. Your house is one of the most significant cultural properties in southern New Mexico. And here is just a picture of the oratorio.
Right.
Just to show what kind of place this is, and so full of 4,000 pieces of art. But you came to an astonishing conclusion, you and your lovely wife, Mary, that you wanted to keep the home and its contents intact. And so you gifted the home and the property to the state of New Mexico to sustain the future of your life work. You spent your life gathering all those wonderful works of art and keeping the plaza in Mesilla intact. No curio shops, no, hamburger stand. It's just lovely what you did. And so in 2006, it became the 7th state monument. You had said, I'm going to ask you this, that both you and your wife were brought up in the Great Depression and knew that giving and sharing with others made the difference. It was an easy decision to give our home to future generations of New Mexicans to learn about the past and to keep their heritage alive. I cannot thank you enough for this. It is such a magnificent gift.
Well, and you can't forget our children, because we gathered in the living room to make a determination of what we should do with the house. And they all agreed.
Mm.
And I had 7 children. So we had 7 children.
Yeah.
Mary nurtured them through a lot.
Well, you certainly raised them with your same perspective on culture. They call you Messiah's cultural guardian, but that they would be able to give this to the state and to not want to hang on to it. I'm sure they have their favorite pieces, but for you to have this room after room of this wonderful old art, old Spanish art and religious artifacts, and you're living there now.
I'll live there till I die, I think. I'm 93, so who knows how long that will be. But I enjoy every moment of it. And we have a group of friends who are absolutely terrific, who certainly will keep up the traditions.
Well, you also have a group of friends. Ever since you announced this gift, people would come by and visit you. I was lucky enough, I was in Las Cruces for a municipal league meeting, and I got to come and have your grand tour of the house, and I was just dazzled, room after room, wonderful light, wonderful statuary, portraits, old documents. What is your favorite piece? Or a couple of favorites. You even have old furniture, a room called the Three Bears room, because you've got, well, tell us about that.
Well, we had many children. We had 7 children. And so in one room, we had 2 beds. We had 3 beds. And 2 of them were rope spring beds. One bed was mine when I was growing up.
Your own.
And the littlest one always moved from the crib to their little bed.
The little,
and then finally to the little bed. And but it was so little of it, we were afraid that it would fall off. We had 2 tall WPA chairs, and we always put them against the bed so the children
wouldn't roll off.
So the kids come through. We have a lot of children who come through the house, and they come through and they said, "Oh, look, the Three Bears room. The bed for the papa, the mama, and the baby bear." So that's the story.
And your collection of religious art is very deeply moving. You have some crucifixes, you have wonderful paintings. What is your favorite? I know you've spent a lifetime collecting them. Which pieces still move you the most?
I think the one of Santiago,
Yeah.
because the story behind it.
Well, your reputation does precede you, and there are many writers and artists have come from all over the country to see this collection that you've put together, always with that knowing and loving eye of the preserving the culture and the place that these pieces will have in history. Many times, you know, a museum will borrow something from the Paul Taylor and family collection, and also I neglected to mention that you've gotten so many buildings named in your honor and a social justice symposium named in your honor. And I know it's embarrassing to you, but on behalf of the state of New Mexico, I have to say thank you for all you've given us and all you've done. And you continue, tell us about what you're in Santa Fe for this time.
Well, I'm in Santa Fe for a Board of Regents meeting. I was on the board a long time ago.
For the museums of New Mexico, right?
Yes, then I was off the board. And now I'm on the board again. And I'm on till 2/1/5. Unless I'm removed for some reason.
I cannot imagine.
But I'll be 95, so whether I make it that long is a big question.
Well, you had mentioned the first time you retired from your wonderful career as an educator that you were not going to go into government, become a lawmaker. You wanted to write. Have you been able to look back at this 93 years? You were like an icon of New Mexico history. Have you had a chance to look back? Are you always showing your house and you know, people always want to talk to you about history? Are you able to do any writing?
Well, I'm not able to do any writing because I have a tremor. And it keeps me from writing. As a matter of fact, I had the tremor when I was in the legislature. And people were so wonderful to me. I remember that I had trouble holding the mic. And so Michael Olguin, I came to work one day, and there was a stand-up mic sitting on my desk. So people were always so thoughtful. And finally, the last year, I had a stamp because, you have to sign all those bills.
Yeah.
So I had a stamp, which I used to sign the bills. So I really, I can dictate. I can still dictate. And I dictate letters. But I don't have enough time, it seems, to sit down and write a chapter about something.
Well, we've run out of time ourselves. I am so grateful that you did take the time to come to Santa Fe and visit with us. Our guest today is J. Paul Taylor, The Man from Mesilla. This is Anna Pacheco's book. Quite a wonderful history of you and all of your contributions. Thank you very much for everything.
It's been such a pleasure, and such a pleasure to see you again.
Absolutely. And it's a pleasure to see you, our audience, today on Report from Santa Fe. I'm Lorene Mills. We've been visiting with J. Paul Taylor, and we'll see you next week.
Past archival programs of Report from Santa Fe are available at the website reportfromsantafe.com. If you have questions or comments, please email info@reportfromsantafe.com. Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.